Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, as a basic human need, shelter comes next only to food and clothing. Even the early man discovered caves to seek shelter against the vagaries of nature. Today, with rising population, many of the developing countries have to cope with and suffer malnutrition, disease, illiteracy, and hunger. Yet, it is the housing problem which seems to be the most intractable one. About one-fourth of the world's population is either houseless or lives in abysmally poor and unhealthy environment. In India, sir, according to the 2001 census, 2 lakh urban households and another 4 lakh rural households have been without shelter. Taking into account the overcrowding and the awful congestion and the need to replace the kacha houses and repair the degraded and dilapidated ones, the actual housing deficit is to the tune of 59 lakhs in urban areas and 188 lakhs in rural areas. The deficit of housing is expected to rise to 39 million by the year 2010 AD. Sir, 25% of the urban population in India lives in slums which are without basic services. Another 20% of the urban population consists of households that are slum dwellers and live in single room units. Sir, this is the housing scenario in our country at the moment. In the early years of our planning with the weak economy that was inherited at the time of independence, housing was not on the top of national agenda. The first priority obviously was to provide food for the people. A massive national program and endeavor has resulted in self-sufficiency in food, and we can be legitimately proud of our industrial progress also. In the sphere of communications and health services, we have made major strides, and the government has also intervened to ensure that clothing is provided reasonably to people in the country. With a fair amount of success in the other spheres, the attention now has obviously to turn to housing and of course to educate. In the last decade, quite a few schemes were promoted for increasing housing activity. For the first time, a policy of housing has been formulated to grapple with the situation. It seeks to provide affordable shelter to every citizen in the country by the turn of the 20th century. Experience has shown that housing units raised by the official agencies for the poor are too expensive, and the intended benefit does not reach the beneficiaries for whom the schemes are launched. Now, the housing policy acknowledges the imperative of bringing the prospective beneficiary to the center of development process, and it emphasizes on involving the people in the housing and development programs. This is a welcome change, a welcome shift in the strategy to combat the problem. Man has always had the instinct to build a shelter for himself. Nothing else explains the mushroom growth of slums. However, a slum dweller, being in constant fear of being evicted from the land which he has encroached upon, does not really spend much on building a shanty for himself, even by his own standard. If he were to be assured of the security of tenure over that particular piece of land, and if that were not possible, if he were to be offered an alternative development piece of land and provided with the basic services like water and sewage system, street lighting and other important amenities, and also offered some small loan on soft terms, I am sure that every household will be able to build for itself a house which would conform to the basic minimum housing norms postulated by the housing policy. Sir, Gram Panchayats, municipal committees and the non-governmental organizations could also be associated in this national endeavor, particularly in the process of disbursement and repayment of loans, and also for increasing the cooperative societies, thus relieving the government of some burdensome task. Sir, today you know that the price of land is escalating at an unimaginable rate. Big business people, big and land developers and property dealers enter the business of real estate to such a high level that at least 60% of the population cannot afford minimum norm fixed for housing in the urban areas by the government. Sir, it is in this perspective that I say that any housing policy can serve a useful purpose only if the task of developing the land for housing purposes is taken over entirely by the government. The role of private builders in contributing to the housing activity in the cities cannot be undermined. But cases are not wanting where people investing their lifelong savings in a house plot have been cheated by the property dealers. Land mafias have come up in almost all the major towns and cities of the country. 840 के आसपास वर्ड है, 80 की स्पीड है 4, और ये आपको जो है SSC CND ग्रेड टेस्ट नंबर 93 के नाम से मिल जाएगा. अपलोड करना पड़ेगा, अभी अपलोड नहीं हुआ है. टेस्ट 93@80। उससे पहले वाला 80 वो 100 पे था। एक बार फिर से लिखेंगे अगर लिखना चाहो तो। एक कंटेंट और लिखो, सीन कंटेंट बोल देता हूँ। रेडी, स्टार्ट इट। Mr. Deputy Chairman, as members of this House are aware, the Industries Development and Regulation Act was enacted in 1951. The object of that measure was to bring within the jurisdiction of the Union Government certain industries of all India importance and to provide a machinery by which these industries could be developed and regulated in conformity with the national plans. This was further revised in May 2012. In 2013, certain amendments were made to this act mainly for the purpose of removing certain practical difficulties that had come to light in the working of the measure and for the inclusion of certain additional industries in the first schedule to the Act. Honorable members of this House might remember that when the Industries Development and Regulation Act was originally enacted in 1951, some apprehensions were entertained and expressed in some quarters that this measure might interfere unduly with the working of industries and might even retard the progress and growth of the industrial development of the country. This measure has now worked for over 4 years and we are in a position to take stock of the situation, and if I may say so, the way in which this act has been working during this period goes to show that the original apprehensions were largely unfounded. In fact, there has of late been a demand from the public that the scope of the Act should be enlarged with a view to including therein some more industries. As a matter of fact, sir, more and more requests are pouring in from the industries themselves that some of them may be brought within the preview of the Act. Before coming to the subject matter of the bill before the House, I might mention briefly some of the salient facts about the working of this measure during the last 4 years. as laid down in Section 5 of this Act, a Central Advisory Council of Industries has been established consisting of representatives of industries, labor, consumers, and primary producers pertaining to the scheduled industries. This body has held 7 meetings so far and advised government on problems relating to the scheduled industries. Sir, with your permission, I take this opportunity of extending my grateful thanks to the members of this council for their advice. The provisions of the Industries Act relating to the grant of registration for existing undertakings and license for a new ventures have been working very smoothly. Over 3,000 industrial undertakings pertaining to the scheduled industries have been registered under the Act, and about 1,400 licenses have been issued for establishment of new industrial undertakings, substantial expansions, and manufacture of new articles which were hitherto not manufactured in the country. A licensing committee has been set up for the examination of the applications received for this purpose. This committee acts as the main instrument of the government's industrial policy and tries to secure a planned development of industries according to the government's policy. As the House is aware, the Central Advisory Council of Industries has set up a subcommittee to review the working of the licensing committee from time to time. First, the application comes to the licensing committee, on which sit the representatives of the different state governments, of the different ministries, of the planning commission, and officers of this ministry. That application is considered from all aspects of resources. Then, when the license is issued or rejected, the party, if necessary, appeals to the minister concerned for review of any decision of the licensing committee, and that decision becomes final. Over and above that, this reviewing committee set up by the Central Advisory Council, which is an integral part of the statute, reviews whether the rejection or acceptance is fair or not. And sir, I can assure the House that every time we have taken into consideration the observations of the reviewing committee for or against any of the applications which have been rejected or accepted. This committee, which is presided over by Honorable Pandit H.N. Kunjru, has so far held 4 meetings and reviewed the work of the licensing committee. I am happy to inform this House that at the last meeting of the subcommittee, the members have expressed appreciation of the thorough and prompt manner in which the licensing committee has generally dealt with applications. Coming to the subject of the bill before us, you will observe that the Act as it stands now applies to industries which are listed in the first schedule. As I have stated, there has been a demand from the public that the scope of the Act should be extended so as to include a number of other important industries. It has been pointed out that certain industries which are closely related to those already included in the schedule do not find a place in the schedule, and it is a great lacuna in the Act. ये 840 वर्डों के साथ डिक्टेट किया गया है और 80 की स्पीड है। ये केसी का 299 नंबर है जो विद कोमा नो कोमा दोनों फाइल में आपको मिल जाएगा। आप टाइप करेंगे, अगर कोई अच्छा लिखा तो फिर सीन कंटेंट लिखेंगे।